In the year 1760, the confluence of the Allegheny and Monongahela rivers forms a strategic junction, shaping early settlement patterns within what becomes Pittsburgh, a frontier space defined by waterways, elevation, and contested imperial interests across the Ohio Valley. British forces secure control after the French and Indian War concludes, establishing new authority over former French positions, while indigenous nations confront shifting alliances and pressures from expanding British colonial ambitions in the region, altering established trade networks and territorial expectations significantly. Fort Pitt emerges upon the ruins of Fort Duquesne, anchoring military presence and signaling British intent to dominate river routes, oversee commerce, and regulate settlement moving westward beyond established colonial boundaries during the early 1760s period of consolidation efforts. The geographic position at the river confluence provides natural transportation corridors, enabling movement of goods, people, and information, while surrounding hills create defensible terrain that shapes urban layout and limits early expansion patterns within the immediate vicinity of settlement.
Mark the chain's end precisely
Traders
at the
establish
boundary.
posts that connect local indigenous communities with British markets,
Clear this
exchanging furs,
sapling from the
tools,
path.
and manufactured goods, embedding Pittsburgh within a wider Atlantic economy dependent on resource extraction and long-distance distribution networks during the decade following occupation. Conflict persists as indigenous resistance, including actions associated with Pontiac's War, challenges British control, forcing reconsideration of frontier policy, military deployment, and diplomatic engagement across the Ohio country, revealing limits of imperial authority in contested borderlands during this period of unrest. The Royal Proclamation of 1763 attempts to restrict colonial expansion west of the Appalachians, establishing a boundary intended to stabilize relations, yet enforcement proves inconsistent, allowing continued encroachment and gradual settlement near Pittsburgh despite official imperial policy constraints. By the late 1760s, small civilian populations gather around Fort Pitt, including traders, artisans, and laborers, forming an emerging community that relies on military protection while developing rudimentary infrastructure and social organization within a frontier context marked by uncertainty. The local economy remains closely tied to the fur trade and supply provisioning for military operations, creating dependency on external demand while limiting diversified production within the settlement's early developmental phase during the late 18th century transition years. As the 1770s approach, tensions between British authorities and colonial settlers increase, influencing Pittsburgh's position as a frontier outpost where loyalties divide, and strategic control over river access gains heightened importance in the evolving imperial crisis across North America. During the American Revolution, the settlement serves as a logistical point for American forces, supporting Western campaigns and maintaining supply lines, while remaining relatively small in population compared to eastern urban centers throughout the conflict years of sustained military activity. After independence, Pittsburgh transitions into part of the new United States, with governance structures gradually replacing military administration, reflecting broader political shifts toward Republican institutions and local civic organization during the 1780s period of national formation and adjustment. Land speculation increases as veterans and settlers seek opportunity in Western territories, driving expansion beyond the original fort area and contributing to disputes over ownership, boundaries, and indigenous claims, highlighting ongoing tensions embedded within frontier development processes during this era. Infrastructure slowly develops, including roads connecting Pittsburgh to eastern markets, reducing isolation and enabling more consistent trade flows, though travel remains difficult, reinforcing the region's semi-peripheral status within the young nation's economic landscape during the late 18th century. The Whiskey Rebellion of 1794, centered in western Pennsylvania, demonstrates resistance to federal taxation, with Pittsburgh nearby as a focal area, revealing tensions between frontier communities and national authority during early implementation of centralized fiscal policy in the Republic. Federal response, including troop mobilization, reinforces governmental power and establishes precedent for enforcing law across distant regions, integrating Pittsburgh more firmly into national political structures while diminishing localized resistance movements after the crisis subsides in the decade following. By 1800, Pittsburgh begins gradual transformation from frontier outpost to small industrial center, utilizing nearby natural resources such as timber and coal, along with river transport, to support emerging manufacturing activities in glass and metal production sectors during this period. Population
It's such
growth
a
accompanies
beautiful day
economic
for the
diversification,
service.
with
truly
immigrants
is.
and migrants
How have you
contributing
been?
labor and skills, gradually expanding urban structures beyond the original settlement area while maintaining reliance on river systems for trade and communication in the early
Leave that
19th
main
century
crate
years.
onto the deck now.
Social
Watch the
structures
ropes.
evolve as
Move it,
institutions
lads.
including churches, schools, and local governance bodies take shape, reflecting increasing stability and organization, yet inequalities persist in access to land, labor opportunities, and political influence among different community groups during this formative phase. The regional economy integrates more fully into national
This section
markets,
here,
with Pittsburgh
near the
serving
river.
as a transfer point between eastern production and western expansion, reinforcing its logistical significance within early American commercial networks during the first decades of the century. Long-term structural patterns established during 1760 to 1820 include reliance on waterways, strategic location, and resource-based industry, factors that continue shaping Pittsburgh's development, influencing later industrialization and urban growth trajectories beyond the initial frontier and early republic. By 1820, Pittsburgh stands as an established town with defined economic roles, political integration, and expanding infrastructure, marking the conclusion of its transition from contested frontier space to structured community within the United States during the early 19th. Between 1760 and 1820, Pittsburgh's development follows a steady progression shaped by geography, resource availability, and its function as a western gateway, linking eastern settlements with territories opening beyond the Appalachian Mountains during the early years of American expansion. The rivers remain central to daily life, serving as transportation corridors for flatboats and keelboats that carry goods downstream toward the Ohio River, reinforcing Pittsburgh's role as a departure point for settlers moving westward into newly accessible lands. Small-scale industries begin to emerge, particularly glassmaking, ironworking, and boat building, utilizing local timber and nearby coal deposits, establishing the foundations of an economy that gradually shifts from trade-based activity toward production and manufacturing in this transitional period. Coal, abundant in the surrounding hills, becomes increasingly important as a fuel source, offering advantages over wood and enabling more efficient industrial processes, while also encouraging the growth of extraction activities that reshape the local landscape and labor patterns.
Stack that one high, driver.
Iron production develops alongside access to raw materials, with furnaces and forges producing tools, nails, and other essential goods, reducing dependence on Eastern imports and contributing to a more self-sufficient regional economy during the early 19th century years. The geographic convergence of rivers continues to influence settlement density, with communities clustering near waterways for access to transport, while steep terrain limits outward expansion, shaping a compact urban form constrained by natural features surrounding the settlement. Transportation improvements, including rudimentary road networks, begin to connect Pittsburgh with eastern markets, though travel remains slow and costly, reinforcing the importance of river systems as the primary means of moving bulk goods during this period. Merchants and entrepreneurs capitalize on Pittsburgh's position, organizing supply chains that support western migration, providing equipment, provisions, and manufactured goods to settlers preparing for journeys into territories beyond the Ohio River Valley frontier. Population growth remains gradual but steady, driven by migration from eastern states and Europe, with newcomers bringing diverse skills and contributing to the expansion of trades, crafts, and early industrial enterprises within the developing town.
The funniest thing I've seen all
Housing
week.
construction reflects practical needs, with wooden structures dominating early architecture, though increasing availability of brick and iron materials begins to influence building practices, signaling gradual shifts in construction techniques and permanence. Social organization becomes more structured, with the establishment of churches, schools, and civic institutions, fostering a sense of community identity while also reinforcing social hierarchies tied to occupation, property ownership, and economic standing. Labor systems evolve as demand increases for skilled and unskilled workers, including artisans, laborers, and apprentices, creating a workforce that supports expanding industries while also experiencing varying levels of economic security and mobility. Trade networks extend beyond regional boundaries, linking Pittsburgh to national and international markets, particularly through the export of manufactured goods and raw materials, integrating the town into broader economic systems shaping early American development. Government presence grows more defined, with local authorities managing infrastructure, law enforcement, and taxation, reflecting increasing political organization and alignment with state and federal systems during the early decades of the 19th century. Economic diversification reduces reliance on any single industry, creating resilience within the local economy, though fluctuations in
All right, bring
demand
the
and
next
supply
load to bay
continue
4.
to influence
Clear the
stability,
pathway.
highlighting the challenges of growth within a developing frontier town. Environmental impact becomes more visible as deforestation, mining, and industrial activity alter the surrounding landscape, demonstrating early interactions between economic expansion and ecological change within the region's evolving physical environment. The role of Pittsburgh as a logistical hub strengthens, facilitating movement of goods between east and west, reinforcing its strategic importance within national expansion and contributing to its growing influence within regional economic
So good to
networks.
see you back here.
Technological developments,
we
though
missed
limited,
it.
begin to
The
affect
service was
production
wonderful.
efficiency, with improvements in tools and processes supporting increased output, setting the stage for more advanced industrialization in subsequent decades beyond this foundational period. Community life reflects both cooperation and tension, as diverse populations navigate shared spaces, economic competition, and differing cultural practices, contributing to a complex social fabric within the growing settlement during this time. Political integration
of these
continues to
spices for that roll
solidify,
of
with
Kente
residents
cloth.
participating in local and state
Agreed.
governance, shaping
May our
policies that
trade routes
influence
prosper.
development, infrastructure, and economic priorities within the broader framework of the United States political system. Long-term structural changes established during this period include the transition toward industrial production, the centrality of transportation networks, and the integration into national markets, all of which defined Pittsburgh's trajectory in subsequent decades. By 1820, Pittsburgh has evolved into a modest but significant industrial and commercial center, characterized by expanding infrastructure, diversified economic activity, and increasing political organization, marking its transformation from frontier settlement to established town. By the early 19th century, Pittsburgh's transformation
Not yet,
reflects
my friend.
accumulated changes from decades of frontier adaptation, with its identity increasingly defined by production, transport coordination, and regional exchange rather than solely military or trade-based functions rooted in earlier periods. Industrial activity intensifies as workshops expand into more